Babies hate it, parents hate it. It goes against every instinct and intuition that you have based on biologically infant normal sleep. But everything you read, everywhere you go, everyone's saying cry it out or some form of cry it out like Ferber or something works and works great. And it only takes a few difficult nights and then your baby sleeps great forever. That's a wonderful dream, but that is not actually what reality is. And that is one of the reasons why I don't use any cry it out when I help families with sleep, because I want to give you solutions that are sustainable long term, that are focused on developing the best bond and relationship with your baby, that acknowledge and accept their development and where they're at socially, emotionally, in terms of their brain development. And there's just so many other alternatives now that I think there are rare cases where it might be helpful, but those are really, really rare. So I don't use it as a method. Oftentimes you think that what you're doing is not working because you're doing it wrong, but it's actually not working because the advice that you're getting is wrong. And I find this is very common when it comes to cry it out based type of sleep approaches. It tends to be really rigid, and parents report that it's difficult to follow because it just, especially if they're breastfeeding, it's just, when you try to implement it, it just, I don't know, causes you more stress and more difficulty. So again, it's not because you're doing it wrong, it's just the advice is wrong. It was not designed for breastfeeding families. Cry it out based sleep training approaches can interfere also with breastfeeding because they usually have expectations of sleep that are based on cultural expectations and maybe convenience, not necessarily based on breastfeeding needs or baby's normal, natural, biological sleep development and rhythms. So when we expect a 3-month-old to sleep for 12 hours at night without needing a feed, we are potentially compromising breastfeeding, because from a breastfeeding perspective, a 3-month-old very much still needs overnight feeds, and they're extremely important to continue. So that's just an example. Cry it out based approaches can cause emotional distress in the parent or the baby or both. Crying is the only way that babies have in order to communicate. It is their primary way of communicating with us. And when they cry, it's because they need something. This is hard because as a parent, they constantly need you. So it's very overwhelming. But the reality doesn't change their biological needs, which is they cry because they're communicating something to us and usually need something. Could be a comfort, could be a change in their environment, could be a feed. So allowing a baby to cry for an extended period of time just based on the clock, because the program said you should only check in 5 minutes or 30 minutes, not at all, whatever the program might say, is problematic because they might be expressing a need that actually needs attention. In my view, cry it out based approaches also tend to interfere with your process of becoming a parent. And here is what I mean by that. Okay, it teaches the parent to focus on external behavior, for example, crying, rather than what's underneath the behavior. So what's underneath the crying? Why is my baby crying? What does their cry sound like? What does their cry mean? Instead, with a cry it out based approach, you're usually looking at the clock, and parents describe that they're just like dying to go in there, feel like they need to go to their baby, but the program says don't go to your baby. So that can be really emotionally distressing to both. And also interfere because you basically have to kind of like harden your heart, and you have to disconnect and ignore with what you naturally feel as their parent in order to follow through with this program. Your entire body, everything feels like you need to go to them when they're crying. And it's happening for a reason. You have parental instincts for a reason. So trying to disconnect from that and instead connect to this program that tells you how long they should cry based on a clock can interfere with this tuning into your baby, how you feel, what you think you need to do as the parent. You as their parent know best what to do, but as a new parent, you also need experiences and you need to get to know them and you need to learn through experience. What does their cry mean? What do I need to do? What do they need at a certain moment? And it can be different things and it takes time and it's just learning. Cried out approaches tend to really miss the mark when it comes to understanding just baby and child needs. They may not take into account the child's individual needs, temperament, personality, whether they're going through a developmental leap, a growth spurt. Sometimes they wake up more because they need to feed more, for example, because they're going through a growth spurt. A cried out based approach would be like, oh, I already fed them at the beginning of the night. They're dry and changed or whatever, so they don't need me anymore. So I'm going to just wait the 30 minutes or whatever the program said to wait, where in reality, they need those extra feeds just during that phase of going through a growth spurt. Maybe they're experiencing teething, illness, or discomfort. Again, cried out based approaches tend to be like they're fed and dry or whatever, so they're fine, versus what does their cry mean to me? What do I think they need? What else is happening there? Why are they crying? I can't tell you enough how many times I've had clients coming to me after sleep training, but basically this can result in missing underlying health issues. It can interfere with just, like I mentioned, because the process of tuning in to your baby, which is essential to their development and your relationship. It doesn't work for about 20% of families, no matter the method used. This is according to research, okay? 20% of families, no matter the sleep training or cried out method used, it will not work. That's 1 in 5 babies. So to me, that seems like a lot of babies. And not a very good success rate, to be honest, for it to turn into something that is constantly recommended to everyone. And also based on research, when it does work, it's not actually reducing wakes for babies, it simply increases sleep for parents. So the baby is less likely to cry out when they do wake up. So parents report sleeping more, but there is no indication that babies sleep anymore. Actually, some study said that the difference was 8 minutes. So they'll sleep 8 minutes more. So this one is this is my favorite because it's also the one that upsets me the most about this whole cry it out, not cry it out debate, is it was never intended as a general practice, even by the person who created it, okay? According to the creator of sleep training, when should cry it out not be used? In this case, this is according to Ferber, who does a timed cry it out method, and lots of sleep training programs, and even some programs that call themselves gentle, are just like a Ferber repackaged nicely. There's a really big popular one that is basically literally Ferber, just with nice marketing. But according to Dr. Ferber, the cry it out method should not be used in certain cases. Specifically, the method is not recommended under 6 months because their brains are not yet developmentally capable of sleeping through the night. It's not recommended for children with medical or developmental conditions, but how would we know that if we're encouraging parents to just leave them to cry without doing all of these screens and making sure there is no developmental or medical conditions first? Your average sleep consultant doesn't have this kind of education or training to help you screen for these medical issues or delays or anything like that. By the way, I part of my work with families is doing a screening to make sure there's no medical conditions or underlying health-related issues for which you need to see another professional. In that case, I refer you to the other professional. We don't just work on sleep without making sure that there's no discomfort, no underlying health reasons that are causing the wakes. Furthermore, Dr. Ferber emphasizes that parents should not use the method if they are not comfortable with the idea. Very important. Sleep consultants, oftentimes, or sleep trainers, don't necessarily encourage your comfort. It's the opposite. A lot of it is focused on like, just get through a hard few days and it's going to be worth it. And like, just put how you feel aside. No, do not put how you feel aside, and don't do it if you don't feel comfortable with it. Even the creator said, don't. If you feel it would be harmful to your child, do not use these methods. Also, if children have a history of neglect or abuse, for example, foster children, this method can be traumatic for the child, so not recommended to a child who may have already have that history. It's not recommended if the child is going through major life transitions or upheaval in their lives. It's important to note that cry it out method is not the only solution for sleep training or for getting better sleep or for getting more independent sleep, for making sure your child's sleep is healthy, for getting more time for yourself, for all of those things that you probably actually want. And it's really important to get personalized recommendations and not go based on advice on social media, for example. There are lots of alternatives nowadays. The alternative to cry it out methods is not just waiting until sleep just improves. One of the things that I offer is an alternative, which is we don't use any crying-based methods together or apart. We really personalize to your needs and your lifestyles and your baby, and we just get to the reason why of your problem. So we get to the reason why they wake, and usually when we resolve the reason, there is more sleep. I make sure that you can set realistic expectations and learn what is normal for them. Oftentimes, parents think that their baby wakes a lot and is not getting healthy sleep when they're actually getting perfectly healthy sleep, but the parent just does not have the information they need in order to know that. So a huge part of my approach is first to help you learn what is normal. To get started, get the free normal baby sleep guide. I'll leave it, the link in the comments, in the description, or you can DM me baby guide to get the link. Cry it out based approaches also have the risk of developing negative sleep associations. So cry it out approaches can create a negative association with sleep. I can't tell you how often I get clients who tell me that they actually have memories from their own childhood of being left to cry, and it created this lifetime fear of sleep and just fear of sleeping. And it can create an association of connection between sleep and feeling abandoned or uncomfortable. Again, we don't want that for healthy lifelong sleep. There is also a lack of evidence, a lack of actual scientific evidence that cry it out methods are effective in the long term. We don't have that much information about the long term actually effects, even though some people claim we do. Or that they do not have any negative effects on the child's emotional, behavioral, and cognitive development. The main problem is that there is no essentially there isn't currently an effective way to really accurately measure how it impacts your child's emotional, behavior, and cognitive development, because it would require being able to isolate each of these things. So it's not that simple to design a study around it. Actually, it's difficult and it hasn't been done so far. Like a good quality, accurate study. Based on what is known about children's emotional, behavioral, and cognitive development, again, as a child and family therapist focused on birth to 6 mental health, their relationship with their caregiver, their relationship with you is just as important as good nutrition. Yes, their connection, their relationship with you is just as important as good nutrition. The relationship, especially in the early days of parenting, is formed through physical touch, nurture, tuning into your baby and their individual needs and in other words, getting to know them and their individual needs, tuning into who you are as a parent, tuning into them, who they are as a person, and forming a relationship and a connection. You cannot spoil a baby with nurture and love and connection. Finally, I think I mentioned this before because I got excited for you to know that cried out based approaches are just not necessary anymore in 99% of situations. Again, I'm going to leave that space. There are situations where it is necessary. Maybe 99 is a made up number, so don't take it. It's not scientifically based. I just made it up. But it's meant to illustrate that there is a small percentage of families and parents where it is probably the best approach to them. My problem with it is that I don't think it should be offered as the first go-to. I think it should be offered in very specific situations. But otherwise, for most babies and parents, these more alternatives and more gentle approaches work just as effectively. Actually, did you know that research shows that for the purpose of achieving independent sleep at the start of the night when they're falling asleep independently, consistent routines are just as effective as leaving them to cry it out. Like equally effective. So literally all you need to do to get independent sleep technically is just to practice it. There is a small caveat. The independence and development differs between babies. For some babies, you can get independent falling asleep sooner, for others later. And it's not because you're doing it wrong. It's just different babies need different things. Every baby and every family is different. If what I share resonates with you, if you're really wanting sleep, maybe more sleep at night, maybe more independent sleep, maybe later morning wakes, maybe just feeling confident about your approach, I help with this. So get in touch. We have one-to-one support services. We have self-paced programs. We have a membership. We have a ton of free resources, a whole blog and free guides and everything. I'll link some of them in the description. Let me know one thing that you learned that surprised you in this video in the comments. And I wish you sweet cuddles and sweet dreams, and see you next time.